Hello and welcome to airgunweb.com, your home for honest, real-world airgun reviews where we bring you the facts, not fluff. My name is Rick Utzler and I want to thank you for joining us today. Our review item for this segment is the BSA Polaris in .22 caliber, which sells for about $360 without a scope or rings. Now normally I would have used a Leapers scope, but I was waiting for a shipment from Leapers to arrive, and as you all know, the show must go on. So for this review, we'll go ahead and use the BSA scope that we used on our CFX Tactical. Let's take a close-up look at this rifle. The BSA Polaris is not your average airgun. While it may look like a Gamo CFX with a wooden stock, it certainly has a lot more to offer the serious airgunner. With Gamo owning BSA, I expected to see some of Gamo's cost-cutting practices to surface in this rifle. Fortunately, the craftsmanship on the BSA Polaris is better than I expected. The bluing and metalwork is noticeably better, and the right-handed hardwood stock is really nice to look at and has a wonderful feel to it. The rifle ships with front and rear fiber optic sights, with the rear sight being fully micro-click adjustable. The rifle uses a standard 11mm dovetail for mounting your choice of optics. For this review, I moved over the BSA 3-9x40 scope that came bundled with my CFX Tactical, and it proved to be a good fit for this review. The BSA Polaris rifle is an underlever cocking rifle rather than a standard break barrel. Once the rifle is cocked, you can rotate the breech, which exposes the loading port of the rifle. You simply insert the pellet, close the breech, and you're ready to fire. The BSA Polaris uses a very familiar trigger design. Like most Gamo products, it has a very long second stage that makes bench shooting less enjoyable than it could be. This particular rifle also had an elusive hitch that would come and go. With a better trigger, this rifle would certainly make it into the exceptional category, but as it sits, it falls just short of that mark. Let's talk a little bit about performance. After last month's review of the Magnum Springers, it was a real joy to shoot something that did not take nearly as much work to shoot well. The BSA Polaris is wonderfully gentle to shoot. It is a typical 12 foot-pound European rifle that emphasizes accuracy over power, a trait that I wish more manufacturers would seek to add to their lineup. As always, we started with our RWS hobby pellets, which are an 11.9 grain wad cutter pellet and are standard for finding the maximum velocity. Here are my results using the RWS hobbies. We had a high of 691 feet per second, a low of 675 feet per second, an average of 684 feet per second, with an extreme spread of 16 feet per second and a standard deviation of 5 feet per second. The maximum energy was 12.6 foot-pounds. Our most accurate pellet was the Craftsman Field Hunting Pointed Pellet. It is a simple pointed hunting pellet and it did very well in our BSA Polaris. Here are my results with the Craftsman Field Hunting Pointed Pellet at 14.3 grain. We had a high of 609 feet per second, a low of 604 feet per second, an average of 605 feet per second, which gave us an extreme spread of only 5 feet per second and a standard deviation of only 1 foot per second. The max energy was 11.7 foot-pounds. As you can see from those stats, the potential consistency from this power plant is incredible, and it may be the most consistent rifle we've tested in 4 years. Now let's talk a little bit about how the gun operates and shoots. While the BSA Polaris is a spring gun, it's not nearly as hold sensitive as the big Magnums we tested last month. The artillery hold, which we demonstrated in our last couple reviews, was the best method for getting the most accurate results. The BSA Polaris is an underlever cocking rifle rather than a break barrel rifle. This has its advantages. The biggest advantage is that the barrel is fixed and never moves, which should prove to provide better accuracy. On paper, that should be the case all the time, but it really comes down to the manufacturing. Some of the world's most accurate air guns are break barrel rifles. If they are made right to begin with, they will always shoot straight. If they are not made correctly, for example, they're not made to the correct tolerances or with the right materials, then regardless of their cocking mechanism, they're not going to last. Here's how you cock, load, and shoot the BSA Polaris. First, you pull down this locking mechanism to release the cocking arm. You pull the cocking arm all the way down until you hear the piston lock into place, and then you return this arm. Next, you rotate the breech so that you can load the pellet. There are two things to be cautious about. First, don't let the pellet flip around or you'll find yourself loading it skirt first. And two, be sure the pellet is all the way into the breech before you try and close this rotating breech, or you could damage the skirt and ruin your shot. Once you know that it's set properly, close the breech, take aim, and gently squeeze the trigger. Our test rifle proved to be exceptionally accurate at both 10 and 20 yards. Given the low velocities, I did not try and stretch it out to 50 yards this time, although I bet under the right conditions it would still do pretty well even at 50 yards. So how accurate was our .22 caliber BSA Polaris? Well, let's take a look at these groups for both 10 and 20 yards respectively. So here's my scorecard for the BSA Polaris in .22 caliber. Let's start with the cons. Although this trigger is better than the standard Gamo trigger, it still has a very long second stage, which makes it harder than it should be to shoot from the bench. Also, the triggers seem to have a catch every so often, and it would cause me to pull a shot here and there. Now this may be an issue with this particular rifle. Personally, it was not that big of a deal, but I gotta tell you, if I had spent $360 out of my own pocket, I'd be talking to Gamo about fixing it. Now here are the pros for this rifle. It's wonderfully easy to cock and shoot. Next to some pre-charged rifles and some CO2 guns, it may be the easiest shooting spring gun that I've ever tested. So let's put all this together with our final summary. The BSA Polaris is a typical 12 foot-pound European air rifle. It is exceptionally accurate, which is critical when you only have 609 feet per second to play with. It is very well balanced and it is a joy to shoot. The price tag of about $360 may discourage some, but if you're looking for a very accurate target gun or a 20-yard squirrel gun, the BSA Polaris may be just what you're looking for. I want to take just a moment and thank the folks at Pyramid Air for sending us this rifle and for sponsoring this review. When you're looking for your next air rifle or your next batch of supplies, please point your browser to www.pyramidair.com or give them a call at 1-888-262-4867. That's 1-888-262-4867. And when you do buy your next air rifle from them, be sure to get the 10 for 10 service. In an ideal world, manufacturers would have perfect quality control. But we all know we don't live in an ideal world. So protect your investment and take advantage of the 10 for 10 program. The gun techs at Pyramid Air will unpack and test your air gun before it leaves the warehouse, which ensures you get a good working product every time. Until next time, this is Rick Utzler with airgunweb.com. Remember, when you are looking for honest, real-world reviews, think of Airgun Web, where we tell you the facts, not the fluff. Thanks again for watching.